What's up, YouTube? This is Brandon, aka Fresh, coming back with another video. Appreciate everybody, all the love and support I got in my first one, and what feels like forever. Just kind of giving the reasons why I stopped teaching. Last year after 8 years of teaching, middle school, high school, just a lot of different areas, and I wanted to kind of get that out there, put that out there on the interweb, so to speak. Especially if I can help any teachers who is dealing with the same situation, kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to figure out whether or not this is going to be it for you or what decision you should make. So check that video out if you hadn't got a chance to take a look at that. Also, please make sure you hit the like button, share this video, subscribe as well. Smash the like button. I'm trying to always make sure I get the likes as high as I can, increase the algorithm so that anybody else who might be, trying to get some information on some of the subjects that I'm talking about, that they don't miss out as well. So this video in particular, I'm discussing the top 5 reasons why teachers leave. And this is a list that I found on the internet. I'll link that in the description so you can check it out and kind of get, an idea for yourself. So as a reminder, these videos, I don't have any script. These are just off the top of my head, off my heart, just kind of what I'm feeling based on what I see. So we're going to start with number 5 on this list. And when I was looking through the list, I was like, man, this is like, I've heard all of these from various people that I've worked with throughout my years in education. And I'll be honest, the list is pretty spot on. I mean, you can rank them however you want to. But the first one they had on the list, from at least the 5th reason, so they went from 5th to 1st, was lack of resources and support. This is such a sad reality for teachers, many teachers, the majority of teachers, where you feel like you've preached the same song, you said the same sermon over and over and over again, and it falls on deaf ears. So many schools, so many teachers are left to their own, basically having to do stuff on their own, whether that means that they have to pay for supplies on their own, out of their own pockets. And that's a no-no. That should never happen in any industry. No corporate industry expects or even requires their employees to pay for things out of their own pocket. Maybe very little small stuff if you feel it's going to benefit you. But typically, the majority of the resources are right there in front of you. There's been so many times I've had to go and get my own markers. I had to get posters. Thankfully, the last school that I was at, they started being able to provide a lot more of those smaller things. But sometimes it even felt like it was an act of Congress just to get extra supplies, which was a little bit unfortunate at times. But yeah, over the years, and thankfully, me being an elective teacher, I didn't have to go out and get a ton of stuff, but at least for what I taught. But there were still times where I had to do it. I mean, there wasn't enough there for what we were really looking for. Even when I wanted to do with my students, I wanted to do a whole lot more with them, so I ended up having to spend extra money just to be able to provide those things. And I know I mentioned in my last video, one of the things that was very disconcerting, very frustrating, was when the pandemic hit. A lot of teachers all across the country, all across the world, screaming about lack of resources, screaming about lack of support, and then all of a sudden, when the pandemic hits, money just comes out of nowhere, and all types of resources just come flooding through coming through the floodgates. And you're kind of looking around like, well, where has this been? Why does it have to take a pandemic in order for a bevy of resources to come through? So that was pretty disappointing. But this is a cry that so many teachers all across the world have been screaming and speaking on. Just not feeling like you have enough resources to be able to adequately do your job, amongst a lot of other stuff that is being required. And then, like I said, I'll get to a lot of that here throughout the video. But that's number 5. Something I've experienced, like I said, throughout my years in education. It's a very unfortunate situation, but it's just a reality, an unfortunate reality, nonetheless. So number 5, lack of resources, lack of support. And then we're going to go to number 4. Number 4 on this list is too much to do. Man, I can speak to this one. I could probably speak to this one just as well as anybody. Teachers talk about the lack of pay, and surprise, surprise, that is on this list, and I'll get to that one in a moment. But I don't want to get this upset as I'm doing this, but teachers get a little bit of a break throughout the day. All right. So you have a 7.5 hour day typically. All right. So let's say, your school starts at 8 and you get out at 3. All right. So that's 7 hours. All right. That's when the day starts. You're expected to be there typically 45 minutes to an hour beforehand, because you typically have some sort of morning duty that you have, or that's a part that helps you with your planning time. So if you show up literally at 8 o'clock when the school day starts, first of all, you're not going to be very effective. So even though that might be what it says on the actual work hours, quote unquote, sheet, the day is actually a whole lot longer than that. It's a lot, especially if you want to be effective. So if the school bell or the first period starts at 8, you need to be there at 7. If it ends at 3 o'clock, you're not walking out the door at 3 o'clock. It just doesn't work like that. Maybe if you're a high school teacher, maybe you have that luxury. But for elementary and middle school teachers, you have to stay because you have to make sure your kids are accounted for. High school, bell rings, you're teenagers, y'all walk home, get the bus, drive, whatever. I'm out of here. You have more of that flexibility and freedom to be able to do that. But even then, high school teachers, they still have to take advantage of the extra time because you got to plan. You only get a certain amount of time to plan. And if you're a high school teacher, for example, you're planning typically for a 90-minute class. So some people might say, oh, well, high school, they only teach 3 subjects throughout the entire day. Well, you're teaching for 90 minutes. That's a long time. And if you want to make sure that you're doing it the proper way, you got to use all that planning period time to your advantage. So if you have an hour or hour and a half planning period, well, yeah, you can kick your feet up and watch Netflix if you want to, but you're going to be doing way more work on the back end. All right. So you have extra duties in the morning. You typically have a lunch duty. Some schools, the teachers have after school duty, basically. So whether it's carpool duty, bus duty, hallway monitor duty. So, you're not leaving at 3 o'clock or whenever your school day ends. So you're usually going to be there 8.5, 9 hours working, at least. Like I said, my school let out at 3 and I would still see teachers there past 4 o'clock, sometimes even till 5, because you want to make sure that you're doing your job. You got papers to grade. You got emails that you got to follow up on. You have phone calls that you have to get out to parents. If you have disciplinary situations or whatever the case may be, there's a lot that goes into it on a daily basis. This is not just one day. You're talking about, if you have 3 to 4 classes that you teach, you got 25, 30 kids minimum on there. That's 100 plus kids that you have to see about, and the day changes like the wind, so it's a big thing where you just feel like you have so much to do, not enough time, and then you still got to go home and do life. If you got a family, you talking about getting home at 5 or even 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you still got life to do, on top of that. It's just a lot. And not to mention the additional duties that they assigned to you. I won't forget, we came back from a pandemic and they were like, yeah, we want y'all to do these data spreadsheets. As soon as we get back, this was when students were coming back with masks on, we want y'all to do these data spreadsheets. We compile all this data about this, that, and the third. And we all were looking at each other like, are y'all serious? Are y'all serious right now? You're not joking, right? You're serious. This is what the county wants us to do. You want us to compile. And it was like a huge, big, 4 spreadsheets of data that they wanted us to compile within our departments. And I was like, y'all are doing a terrible job of reading the room right now. So that on top of all the other duties that I just mentioned, there's all these little bureaucracy type, ridiculous stuff that they want you to do for whatever reason to make it sound good. It's just a bunch of nonsense at times, and it doesn't really allow teachers to really do their job, which is to try to really support and be there for the kids, and that's really where it's unfortunate. So that's number 4. Just too much to do, too little time. Number 3 on this list, something that, and not just teachers, but a lot of people can relate to, but specifically with teachers, is stress. So I just mentioned the lack of support and resources. I mentioned too much to do. Well, a lot of that's going to compound a lot of stress. You're worrying about, your kids, like I just mentioned, you got 100+ kids throughout the day, throughout a year's worth of time every day that you have to account for. You want to make sure that you're doing the right job. And then for my core teachers, they have testing requirements that, if their students aren't testing well, admin's going to be like, oh, what's up with you? Doesn't matter how good you are, how effective you are. It's all about the numbers. The numbers in their mind don't lie. And it's so unfair. It's so unfortunate. I've seen so many teachers, I walk in their classroom. I'm like, man, they got it laid out. Like, what is it? Bell ringer. I'm so rusty. Essential question, objective, everything like just laid out perfectly. Their classroom management is on point. But if they have students in there, who have IEPs or they're just not grasping as much as that you want. They just don't test well. And you just have a bad year where the students, they just don't test well. You could have prepared them perfectly as well as you could have. They just didn't test well. And then it's going to negatively affect you or reflect on you. And that's just so unfortunate, which, is going to lend a lot of stress on top of that. And all those things that I said beforehand is what leads to that. You don't have enough time throughout the day to get everything accomplished. You can't hit every single student. You only have a certain amount of time with them. And then you give them a test and you're like, oh man, my kids don't feel prepared. They didn't test well. Then you got to grade the papers. Then you have to respond to parents who have questions about why their students aren't performing well. Then they want to meet with you. I mean, it just adds up and you're just like, I can't deal with, 20 different parents. I got all these students that I'm trying to get prepared well, and it's just not working the way that you want to. And even if it is working well, you're putting so much pressure on yourself that it's gonna create stress. And it's not worth it, at least in my opinion, for what the next one is, which is the lack of pay, the low pay, the horrendous pay, the embarrassing pay that teachers get. So that's number 2 on this list. And I don't want to speak on this too long because I end up probably throwing my phone. But I remember looking at the list for 2022, 2023, and I'm in North Carolina. And I just remember I'd already, left the school system, but I just remember just being embarrassed for my colleagues. Like I was just so embarrassed about, this is what, teachers are expected to take home and support and provide for their families. Like how can you provide for your family with a starting salary of $37,000? And then you're there for 20 plus years as a teacher with the master's, which you get no extra pay for master's degrees in North Carolina. No, none, zero, zilch, nada. They ended that, I think, in 2013, somewhere in there, 2012, 2013. So you get no extra pay for a master's degree. You max out at around $55,000, $56,000 for after 20 years. Name another industry where you've been somewhere for 20 years and your max pay is $55,000. So then what they want to do is they want to, say, oh, well, you need to be nationally board certified. You get an extra pay for being nationally board certified. Well, that's cool and all, but being nationally board certified, talking to some of those teachers is almost more taxing and more stressful to get a PhD. Like all the stuff and all the requirements that you do just to be nationally board certified, just for an extra, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000 per year. Don't quote me on that, but it's not a whole lot. It's a decent amount of increase. And what they do is they string you along and they say, oh, well, you don't want to miss the raise next year. You're going to get a 2-3% raise, which, is nothing. It's pennies on the dollar. It doesn't, is not really fully in line with inflation, and it's just terrible. I feel like, you've seen many people across different other industries, people who may not necessarily be teachers. They always say, well, why don't we pay teachers more? Why don't we pay, firefighters more, or whatever the case may be. And a lot of teachers, and especially in this day and age where they're seeing all the technology and social media and how you can come up in other industries. Why would I waste my time? Why would I waste my time, stressing myself out, for 40,000 or even 45,000, wherever you are. And it's not for every state. Some states, they pay, much better, but then the cost of living, it almost balances itself out. But a lot of states, it's absolutely just atrocious. It's embarrassing. And it just makes you feel like your position is not respected. You spend, X amount of years, 4+ years, getting a degree that you have to have. You cannot teach without a degree. You have to have a teacher's degree, which is ridiculous. But you spend all this time getting this degree for them to slap you in the face to say, oh, well, we're only going to pay you 35,000, 37,000. So that's what you're expected to, provide for your family. They string you along for these little, trash raises that they give whenever they feel like it. There is not for any other industry. There's a plan in place for advancement. Plan in place for advancement. You cannot advance in education like you can advance anywhere else. If you do a good job anywhere else in the corporate world, then you have a chance for management, which comes with more responsibilities and a pay increase. You have to go back to school to get another degree in order to even be able to be a principal. Like, it's ridiculous. You could be an excellent classroom manager, excellent person within your field, and you could be fit to lead a school, at least be helpful in the admin department. But if you don't have a piece of paper, it's basically saying that you're not qualified to do it, which is ridiculous. So there's a terrible track for teachers to be on in terms of advancement and for pay. And that's definitely a reason why a lot of teachers say, you know what, forget this, I'm out of here. Which leads to the last one. After you've dealt with the lack of resources, you've dealt with having so much on your plate in terms of workload, you've dealt with the stress, you finally said, you know what, the pay sucks. It leads to the burnout. I mentioned this on my last video. I just had enough, I had no energy. I had nothing left to give. I gave every ounce of my heart and soul, to the profession, and I was done. I had nothing else that I can give. I had nothing for my family, like I had to, one video, I might just have to post a before and after, or not before and after, but there's a shot of me on my last day of school, my last day teaching. Like, you just see in my face that I was just done. like I just looked like, I was like, Brandon, you look terrible. I looked horrible. Like, I didn't like how I looked. But I was done. I had no energy. I was just ready for it to be over with. But 8 years of teaching, and then, 2 to 3 extra more just in the education period, it weighs on you, for all the things that I just mentioned. You feel like, you don't have a place to really grow. You get the same old stuff every year, the same lies that they tell you. They add more things on your plate. You don't have enough time. You got to deal with the kids and the parents, and the bureaucracy that all is there, and you get to the point where you can't handle it anymore. Or it's not worth it, rather. It's not worth it. It wasn't worth it to me. And plus, I had other aspirations anyway, which made it easier for me. But I had no more passion in the same manner that I did when I first walked into it. And I've had that same conversation with, some colleagues that left around the same time I did. It's just had nothing else. Couldn't do it no more. And there's one person that, they left, they were a teacher for maybe 4 or 5 years. 5 years. And I don't even think the guy was 30 years old, or he may have just turned 30. And he was done. I have nothing else. And it's so sad. It's so unfortunate, that it has to even come to that. And that there's teachers right now who are so burnt out, but they're afraid of losing out on retirement, on their right amount of retirement money. So they suck it up and they stick it out every single year. but they look like they've aged 10 years easily. And the interesting thing about that, there was a teacher friend of mine who retired the year before I did, or, left or whatever the year before I did. And, I saw her recently, and she's probably in her early 50s. And I saw her recently, and I was like, man, you look vibrant. She had, nice little dress on, like, her face was like just lit up. I'm like, man, like, look like you've added like 5-10 years back to your life. And that shouldn't be the case. After you've left your profession, you shouldn't feel like they've sucked the life out of you, and that you can finally, like, turn a switch on and start living again. Like, I didn't want that to be my reality. And I wanted to leave before I felt like it was going to get to that point. So that's the list. Number 5, lack of resources, lack of support. Number 4, too much to do. Number 3, stress. 2, low pay. And then number 1, which you hear, many of you probably have already heard, the burnout. Just can't take it anymore. Yeah. So let me know what you think. Let me know if this list, if you feel, whether the order, we can debate the order in the comments. Let me know if you're in education, if you feel that this is something that is pretty spot on, if these are things that you've experienced, if you've left, or if you're still in education, if you feel like, you're going through this, let's have a dialogue. We can chop it up in the comment section. Like I said, you may be helping somebody else. But last and not least, thank you for watching the video. Please make sure you hit the like button, smash the like button, subscribe. I want to try to do this on a weekly basis until I start getting really, used to it, and I can maybe hit, a couple videos a week. But again, I'm going to talk about other various, subjects. It won't just be all education. Be some relationship stuff, some life stuff, throw some sports in there. It's a big passion of mine. But I definitely wanted to talk about, something that's very near and dear to me, which is education. So again, hit the like button, share this video with any and whomever, and I'll see y'all on the next video. Peace.